Good evening. It is Sunday, March the 27th, about 8:15 p.m. This is the Chucktown Wind Report brought to you by Wind Alert. My name is Shay Gibson, meteorologist, weather flow. Let's go ahead and talk about winds and weather for Monday and through most of the week after our Easter weekend, as we're seeing pretty much a washout today with this Gulf swath of Gulf moisture pulling up from the Gulf of Mexico into the southeast region. All of this energy is going to be moving east tonight and moving off of the coastline, so we're going to get a break in the rains. We'll see some clearing tomorrow morning, possibly even some sunshine as we get some broken up moisture out here to the west. We may see some westerly winds coming in behind this swath of moisture by tomorrow morning, and then that'll help some of the clearing and drying of the air. And then we could see, with another cold front boundary, some sea breeze coupling tomorrow afternoon, bring the winds up. So I'm going to go ahead and call for 10 to 14 knots along the beaches, 12 to 16 knots inland, with potential for a couple of extra knots, especially inland. So we'll have to see what happens. The air is pretty saturated right now, so we could see some of those marine layering issues along the coastline, the immediate beaches at the barrier islands. But as we head into Tuesday, let's take a look at the surface map. Here's that swath of moisture that's going to be moving to the east. Here's our cold front that's going to be pushing through by tomorrow night, with some sea breeze coupling ahead of it tomorrow afternoon. And then we have this area of high pressure here that's going to be moving up to the north and setting up a northeast to east-northeast wedge down the coastline for Tuesday and even into early Wednesday morning. Now the gradient will be dependent on how strong that high pressure becomes up here to our north. So for Tuesday, we could see a decent moderate flow meet 13 to 17 knots with potential for 15 to 19 knots long, specifically along the barrier island beaches. So that's what I'm going to call for. I'm going to err on the side of caution, say 13 to 17 with potential for 15 to 19 for Tuesday. As we get into Wednesday, this high pressure moves out into the Atlantic. The winds become a little bit more east to east southeast. We get a little bit of a doldrum there for Wednesday as winds die down to 10 knots or below until we get to Thursday, when we see a very cold air mass drop down. Winter is not quite over yet. The Northeast could be seeing another winter setup as an Arctic mass drops down. We have high pressure that builds down into the region, and what that's going to do is force another cold front to come through. And with this high pressure out here, the models are starting to see it now, where we see a very strong southerly flow in the warm air sector out ahead of that cold air mass, and that's going to be very complex. But you're seeing in the models right now in the quick look where we're getting into the mid to upper 20s and even near 30 knots for some of the forecast lines. It may not pan out that way, but we'll definitely take a look. So let's look at Datascope for Charleston. And right now we're seeing 15 knots gusting to 17 knots along an easterly gradient out there. The harbor has 13 knots with 15 knot gusts, and that's pretty much just based on a little bit of high pressure overhead to the north that's wedging down into the region. Folly Beach, we see a northeast 11 knots with 13 knot gusts. Let's take a look at the details for the area. And here's what's going on right now on the graph. At 8 p.m. we're sitting here. This is the Isle of Palms details, and as we get into Monday, let's go ahead and look ahead into Monday. I'm going to enable all these models and just take a look and see what they're saying for guidance. And a lot of them are jumping around overnight, waiting for all that moisture to sort of clear the coastline. But by the morning time, everything starts to become a little bit more uniform looking from the west and sort of bending to the southwest. The NAM 5K is definitely showing that southwest sea breeze coupling and actually coming up by late afternoon. So that's why I said 10 to 14 knots with potential for higher along the beaches, because we could see a decent little flow ahead of the next cold front boundary that drops into the region. Now as we get into Tuesday, here's the bump that some of these models are showing from the north-northeast and northeast and then bending out. The trend is downwards for some of these models. However, if we see that high pressure built to the north and the gradient actually tightens, we could see these numbers come up significantly higher than what these models are showing. So always something to watch. As we get into Wednesday, we see that easterly to southeast gradient sort of fall off. Things get a little bit light. Probably going to be high there, saying 10 knots. Could see a little bit of a gradient hold that, but I'm going to say about 7 to 10 knots or 7 to 11 knots on Wednesday. And as we get into Thursday, this is where the models are really starting to jump up in values from the south to south-southwest ahead of the next polar mass that drops down from the north with a cold front. And you can see down here in some of the details, they're saying 19 and gusting up to 30 to 32 knots on Friday. So we'll have to watch and see what happens there. I think a lot of that is based on what's called low-level jetting that the models are picking up on. It doesn't always pan out that way. Sometimes it will inland, but not necessarily at the beaches, especially with the air temperatures being higher than the water temperatures, which are now at 65.5 degrees. It depends on how warm the air is ahead of the cold front as to whether or not we get the mixing. So we'll wait and see. We'll take a look at that on Tuesday or Wednesday and see what's going on. But for right now, just as a recap, we'll say for Monday, for tomorrow, westerly flow in the morning meets low teens in the afternoon, 10 to 14 knots. Tuesday, we see northeast to east northeast gradient build in 13 to 17 knots with potential for 15 to 19. Wednesday, things calm down near 10 knots from the east to east southeast over to southeast. And as we get into Thursday, Friday, a little early to call there, but it does look like a southerly flow has some potential for increases. And that will do it. High tide tomorrow will be, let me take a look at Monday. High tide tomorrow will be at 11:15 a.m., low tide 5:17 p.m., and that is at Breach Inlet. And that's going to do it for the Chucktown Wind Report. Until the next one, take care. Thanks for watching.